to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
This is Dr. David Perrodin, and I want to thank you as we begin another journey into school and community safety. If you're looking for industrial safety expert, Appalachian State University professor Dr. Timothy Ludwig, please visit www.safety-doc.com. Again, that's Dr. Timothy Ludwig at www.safety-doc.com. Hi, this is Dr. David Perrodin, and welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast. Hey, we've had a little bit of a time off here with the show. Some vacations for the safety docs and family birthdays, a trip to Lambeau Field for the Combine for training camp, and then I had some blue screen issues going on with the studio here, with the computer system. Had to get that worked out, but glad to be back, and back in a big way with my guest today, Charles Mack. Let me tell you a little bit about Charles, and then I'm going to have him share his interest. He was a field support analyst with U.S. Steel, recently left that position for a similar role with the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, one of the best in the country. What we're going to talk about today is U.S. Steel's safety culture, specific to like the research center. Very safe. You know, we see these signs, have not had an accident for 21 days or something like that, but remarkable streak at U.S. Steel and kind of the culture that went with that in that research center. And then we're going to also address economic safety. Talk about economic safety, personal economic safety, making yourself resilient by adding certifications, side hustles, things like that. When I mean side hustles, side gigs, side jobs, things that if the economy changes, you have more income streams to rely upon, but also it makes you more of an attractive candidate for positions. Obviously, with Charles going from his position at U.S. Steel to the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, some of the certifications that he obtained definitely contributed to that. And keeping a low profile in social media with someone that has to work with people on a very regular basis as part of his job. Charles is going to talk about that. We're going to explore that also. We've both been off Facebook for a number of years, and the importance of understanding what happens when you go on social media, especially professionally, what that can mean for you. And then finally, we're going to talk about transitioning employers, leaving one job and going to another job, what that looks like when there are things at play, such as a like non-disclosure agreement, meaning I can't take anything from the company that I'm working at now with me to the next company, in sharing of proprietary information, and just kind of being aware of that, because one thing I see in expert witness work is that's becoming more prevalent. And sometimes people aren't even aware that they've entered into these agreements because they've been working somewhere for 10 or 15 years, and they leave and maybe they take a PowerPoint or a presentation with them somewhere else. And suddenly, it creates a real problem. So, and I have an interesting story to share about Lambeau Field at some point, but welcome right now, Charles Mack, to the Safety Doc Podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's hear about you and living in the Pittsburgh area and the work that you've done and your interest in safety overall. If you can help us to understand that.
No, of course, I'm not the only one that has been traveling lately. I just got back yesterday from the Flight 93 Memorial, since Shanksville, Pennsylvania is only about a 2-hour drive away. Everybody I knew magically said, "Hey, I'm leaving town for the week." I'm like, "What am I doing here? I got to go."
Right.
So it was a moving trip. It was only a day, but I won't forget it. Where they have basically turned the whole Flight 93 crash site into a memorial. It's acres upon acres. It's massive. So again, it was something I needed to get out to. So I wanted something close to home, yet away from another city. It was either there or Cleveland. So where am I going to go?
Sure.
So yeah, I'm just getting back. Again, this is a odd time for me. I've never had to be in this situation before, switching jobs while having one. I know every job I've had to be out of work and finding it.
Right.
It is nice to just have that comfort zone, so to speak. Again, I do IT support work. I basically work doing desk side support. Anytime someone has an IT related issue, if the help desk can't fix it, they send us out to your location and resolve the issue for you. So it is an interesting position because you see a lot of different departments within a company. You're not just in accounting, you're not in IT, you're not in engineering, so to speak. You get to see the company almost as a whole as to what it does, especially on the business side, since a lot of my customers are business users, or they were at US still, business users, engineers, and even accountants. So again, you get to see a little bit of everything. On the tech side, you get begged for access all the time, and you got to be professional and say, that doesn't comply with our security policies. I can't give it to you. They'll try every trick in the book, but again, we are kind of like the face of IT within companies. So that's what I do for a living, for my 9 to 5, which we'll be talking a lot about.
So one thing we've talked about beforehand was U.S. Steel and kind of a remarkable safety culture specific to like this research center, which you identified as being separate than the actual manufacturing center, but still, the research center going on something like 10 years of not having a significant safety event. So tell me about that. And was there, regular training that was going on, or what was the safety culture? People encouraged to submit ideas if, they don't feel something is safe, or if you're going around and you're seeing something or whatever, it's like, we want you to bring this to our attention, regular in-services. Because, to me, this is, in any environment, this is pretty rare to have this level of continuous safety. So what from your perspective made that happen?
Again, it's not a manufacturing environment, even though manufacturing still happens there. It is a more professional environment. I think the people, by their nature as scientists and engineers and research technicians, they have that mental focus on everything has to be right. Think about it as a big lab. You got to have the right conditions to make what you want. And safety kind of was, in my opinion, kind of a continuation of that mindset. I remember my first day, I had to support there. Like I hated all kind of PPE. They want to make sure whatever your environment is as safe as possible. And the fact that it is such a small scale, I think it was more controllable. Every month we would get together. The entire building would have monthly safety meetings that I would support. There would be we get stats from other locations in the companies, other plants, and we would see what kind of OSHA incident rates they have. Now again, you're in the involvement of large scale industrial production at that point. So again, the environment was different. I think the people were different, and just mentally how everybody is there, it contributed to that 10-year run. Mind you, I'm only a year in on that. So, everybody before me had a part to play. And again, it's more of like I guess, a scientific method version of safety, just because that's what they do day in and day out.
So you talked about the monthly meetings. So tell me more about what the monthly meeting would be like. What they would cover, who would talk, what they would present. Did they also talk about, this happened in another industry, so we have to be aware of it, so it doesn't happen here? Because I'm just honestly not that familiar with this being a regular practice in a lot of industries. So again,
Right.
I'm pretty impressed by this. So if you can just walk through what was happening during these meetings.
Again, like every month, the entire building, there would probably be 80 to 100 people would get together. And the monthly safety meeting we would go over like the previous month's safety metrics for the company. How various locations are doing in terms of injuries, days away, all the metrics you're probably familiar with in terms of OSHA requirements, OSHA rules and regulations. And then each month we would just talk about certain things. This month. It's been hot here recently, and a big thing is, how to stay cool was the prior month's little tip, little video. We watched a video. They have a bunch of training videos. The safety people at US Steel do great work getting that material together. So we would just review the material. Any kind of incident that would happen in a plant that was serious, we would discuss it. Whether it be, major injury, somewhere. They would go over what happened, what was wrong in the situation, what should have been corrected in the situation, and how it was corrected. So an incident wouldn't happen again. Basically, every month we review all this, and that was the gist of a safety meeting. It was broad, but yet, everybody could take away from it.
So you say like the whole department was there, like the whole building was there?
The whole building. It doesn't matter. With the U.S. Steel, they're always, they always talk about safety. Now, you can say, oh, they talk about and whatever. No, they are serious about safety. There's a lot of OSHA stuff out there that they need to comply with.
So what you're talking about reminds me of what's called in the military after action reports, and also, if there's like a vehicle accident or something like that, and fire and police respond and stuff like that, they'll do an after action report, which you're probably familiar with, Charles. But usually those are shared pretty closely to just like the people involved. So when you're talking about this being shared with a large number of people, I think that's incredible, because too often people who are not directly involved in these incidents aren't made aware of the instance, and then also, as you said, what happened, why it happened, and what was done to correct it. It just seems to be like the 12 people that might have been involved in it kind of get the debriefing on that, and everyone else is wondering a little bit like what happened or things like that. So, so I think that's awesome. That is something I stress. I also work as a critical incident debriefer for the Sheriff's Department. When I say work, it's volunteer work. But we go over more or less, significant or sentinel events. Might be an accident on the interstate where, some people were killed, and then the response to that, and debriefing through how, that was handled, and things relative to what might change, and also just the well-being of people. So when you talk about this, it conveys that U.S. Steel places a premium on safety. Because if I'm going to this, it's prioritized. U.S. Steel is like, you're going to this. We want you to hear this. We want you to participate in this. So it's that whole thing of prioritization for safety. So let's anything you want to add to that? I'm really impressed by that.
Again, I'm sure I'll get the whole safety spiel at University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Which has a whole other menu of safety related items. I mean, you're going from heavy industry, which has a whole bunch of potential pitfalls and perils, to the healthcare industry. So you go from the industry side and the medical side. There's still safety precautions you have to take within industries. Again, I just wanted to focus on the steel side of things. That's where I'm coming from. But I'm sure you're going to get your whole safety-related items addressed in the healthcare sector also.
And when I work with schools, for example, schools don't seem to yet be up to speed with what you've just described, and slowly getting there. But again, that's an area where education, I think, is behind what the environment that you just described. So one of the things that I've been really impressed in learning more about you, Charles, is the way that you approached what I'm going to call economic safety, personal economic safety. And this is something I've done to some extent. And I think a lot of people that want to be resilient in whatever the economy throws at them, and also to create increased marketability, I call it this economic safety factor. You chose to pursue certifications. I'm not sure if you did any. I mean, for a better term, I call them side hustles, but it be like working some part-time stuff that might be related to your job, your skill set. But tell me about how you decided. I want to get more certifications. Here are the certifications I want to get. Here's the doors I want to have potentially open up for me in the future, because you took that upon yourself to do that. So what were the things that started to trend in your mind of saying, I really need to do this, and then how did you decide what to do? These are the certifications I want.
Don't go to grad school unless you have a really good reason to go. The reason I say this was I was accepted a number of years ago at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. for a master's program. And it was a management program. But luckily, the situation saved me from dropping a good $60,000 on a grad school. And I was able to apply that money elsewhere. Right. Especially, the field I'm in IT, get your industry certs, whether it be, in my case, I got my Microsoft certs, my Microsoft Certified Professional cert, and my MCSA certification. You have in different IT industries, you can get your CCNA, you can get your Certified Ethical Hacker certification, depending on what in IT you want to go for. Companies more and more recognizing industry certs rather than, say, education. Industry certs say, hey, this guy understands the environment we're going to be working in. I think he has a better chance than someone that has a master's degree in IT management, for example.
Okay. So how did you pick those up? Was it part through the company, or was it on your own? I mean, were you doing this at night? Did you talk to, other people and they were making these recommendations, or?
Get your company to pay for it if you can. I was lucky; my company paid for me to get my Microsoft certification, and I thank them by being plucked to somewhere else. But if wherever you're working, your employer, if they offer any kind of compensation or paid training, or they want to send you to a boot camp or other educational opportunities, if they want to pay for it and you want to put the time in, I would go for it.
Okay, so how did it work for you? Exactly.
Again, our team got pushed. Everybody on our support team got pushed. You got to get certified in something this year. So again, given what I do, I went for the Microsoft certifications. I'm not in networking or anything. I am desk side support, and the Microsoft certifications fit my skill set and what I need skill-wise moving forward in terms of supporting end users, essentially. They pushed us. That was the direction I took. Other of my teammates got pushed to, say, certified ethical hacker, or you're or your Cisco CCNA, if you want to go the networking route. Again, it's where you see yourself. I as much as I hate getting asked this question, in 5 years, what are your springboards to get there?
Right.
And those are the springboards, I took in terms of what I want to do in my career.
So, any side hustles? Anything that you did that was tech related? Even hobby that was tech related? Did you get a drone, start to learn some drone stuff? I mean, I'm just curious. What were some side things? And did you make money off of those?
Oh yeah. My side hustle is I sell sports ball memorabilia.
Okay.
And it was just a hobby I had, and I was able to, thanks to the wonders of e-commerce, just make a little eBay site, sell my wares online. It's a physical product. And it earned me money on the side. And hey, when I was out of work, I didn't take unemployment. I just, I hustled my way through paying my bills through the side business, selling things on eBay. So then again, I think this is how, if people were raised a certain way, it seems like everybody in my family has a 9-to-5 and some sort of side hustle doing something, whether it be cutting a hair, managing a bowling alley. In terms of my family, everybody was doing something on the side. I think it was just a part of my family's culture and how we were raised too. So you're always working, trying to make a buck.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
I think that's something which is critical today because, some people that you and I both know, Aaron Clary, for example, for a number of years, Aaron taught ballroom dancing on the side. I think still teaches some college courses in finance on the side, but writes, books and things like that. But had these side hustles going on. Personally, I remember being maybe 12 years old. Well, I mean, when I first started to kind of work, we lived a block away from a concrete factory, and my brother had worked there part-time, like in high school and college, and they hired me to stuff styrofoam into cinder blocks to insulate them for construction. But I think I was only 12 at the time, and I don't know what the work permit scenario was back then, if you could work 15, 20 hours a week. But I mean, I was always doing those things. But then eventually, once I got into my profession, I started to teach a lot of college classes. So I would write classes. I would propose them to universities, and they would take me up, for the most case. One university I've been with for now, I think almost 15 years, and I've taught probably like 100 courses for them, all in adjunct status, but like graduate courses. So it's really, it's been terrific because, it's not an income that I depend on, but it's a way for me to always sharpen my skill set because I'm always having to stay current with what's in the field. Like right now, I'm going to be teaching more of a law class. I'm not a lawyer, but because of the expert witness work I do, they asked if I would teach this class, which was more centered on like law for school superintendents in the fall. So that's a class I'm actually building right now. And putting that together through different research that I do. I also started to, I've signed up with an expert witness company. They had approached me. I was on PBS a couple of years ago doing some safety stuff, and they said, we get approached with cases where they want either a consult on, what to do in certain things, or go all the way to court, do an expert witness report, testify, things like that. Would you be interested in? And I said, yeah, maybe. So the funny part there was when I got my first offer, the lawyer was saying, well, what do you want for a retainer, and all of these different terms. And I hadn't researched it that far out. So,
right.
So I'm having to kind of play it cool in the moment and be like, well, I said, I really got to learn more about the case before I put together what my specific fees are. I'm just buying myself time. And then like that night I'm going on like searching for all the different samples and kind of came up with where I felt my range was, which was low actually. I remember I got done with the case and the lawyer was like, you really did a lot for like a little amount of money. I'm like, okay, I won't make that mistake again. So yeah, had that going in, and also consult with a company in California on product development for threat reporting, and just got done with the contract, kind of do that year by year. And I have a lot of flexibility in that because I do some professional development for this company, and really from the legally like defensible perspective of making sure that their clients are doing what they need to do for professional development, that they're documenting, that they have an induction process when people come in and out, and citing all of that. And I kind of like to do that stuff. So, but these are all things that get done, as you know, with side things. These are at night. This is 9 o'clock. This is midnight. This might be on a weekend or something like that. But it's one of those things which has created a lot of opportunities for me. I mean, my career is definitely in the later stages. And I think, between, you and I, I'm probably 10, 12 years older than you are, but, it helped me pay my house off early, which was fantastic. And
that's a big one. I know mine's paid off. I'm in my mid to late 30s. So, yeah, I think if you get to be our age and you, again, always have money coming in is the big takeaway of everything you do on the side, and my little side deal. Again, just keep that money in, and again, the things that I could Clary talks about ad nauseum. No debt, keep your bills low, have some sort of income coming in. In my case, I actually took my side hustle and lived off it for a couple of years. I ended up being laid off. This is probably about 5 years ago. I think I got to the point where Clary, I'm like, forget corporate America. I'm doing my own thing. I'm done. And it was able to provide me a living for a couple of years until I needed an actual income, getting back into the corporate side of things. But again, always keep some sort of income coming in. It can only help you now, even if it's a little extra money you can put toward the mortgage or whatever debts you have. Get those paid down. Again, having a house paid off is the greatest feeling ever. So
it is. So yeah, I remember, and that was the goal. When I was doing this, I was putting that money into a different account, and then I would just transfer it over to make additional mortgage payments. And there were some really good years. I mean, because the university actually had like a staff member quit like at the start of the year, and then they said, would you take on this extra load? So I was almost like doing a full-time university gig plus like my regular job, but I mean, they weren't overlapping. It was like weekends or teaching at night and stuff like that. But I remember being able then to pay that off and have that extra money every month, which then helped me to go more aggressively into retiring early. So, I mean, I'm 46 and we've talked about retirement. So it'll either be next year or the year after retirement, and then I'll continue more on the university side in my consulting, which will get us by fine because, I mean, we don't have the debts and the things are paid off.
Right.
But it's so when you took your IT skills, and it sounds like you developed your website, and then you also brought marketing into that, and so it probably honed your marketing skills significantly. I'm guessing once you built your website and once you were selling your sports memorabilia.
The market is actually that's why I still use eBay. You have a built-in market of 100 million users worldwide. If you have a market that big, the marketing takes care of itself. I never really, ran ad campaigns. And again, if you do sell on eBay, you have a reputation. You have your feedback. Say you go on eBay, hey, someone has 100% feedback. So
Right.
Your feedback of what you sell give you your own, promotion, so to speak, in marketing. Again, what you put out there, if it gets people attention, they'll talk about it.
Yeah, that's so true. That's one of the things I think is a big advantage today, for someone's personal reputation. For example, on eBay, I just bought a keyboard off of eBay. But you look at the feedback of somebody, and also on Amazon, although Amazon's not quite as tight with that because you can have
Right.
different vendors, but you can get so many reviews of products and reviews of personal services and make a really informed decision. And I think it forces people to stay on their A game, also to making sure that they're shipping on time, that whatever they're putting together they're describing accurately, that they're answering questions, and then people can count on them. As you said, that happens. I mean, like, for some of the work I do, the expert witness work, there's a whole side where people that contact the agency can see the things that I've done and the ratings from people that I've worked on and things like that too. So, I mean, it's very strong there that you have to have much fidelity with your reputation. Any published works that you do, you make sure you get into them. So those are available to the, prospective clients and things like that too. I really like what you've talked about as far as seeking the certifications, honing different skills such as marketing, and let's move this into a little bit of a different area. So we've been talking eBay, and I'm going to branch this into social media. You're not on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but
No, not at all.
it's funny because sometimes people will say, like, I couldn't find you on Facebook. Are you going under like a different name or like a different? I'm like, dude, like, I'm not on Facebook. No.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where actually I have a book that's due to my editor on September 10th, and my publisher actually on September 10th. And one of the things we've kind of talked about is my social media presence, because it's out there in Twitter, and I have the website, and outside of that though, and the podcast, which are pretty substantial, but I don't have Facebook. And one thing they ask, do you have Facebook and things like that? And I said, well, no, and I'm not going to get it. But tell me about like your reason to get off Facebook, and then also maybe professionally, how it impacted you both in a positive and if there was a negative way for that. But how did you come to that point of like, I'm gone, I'm off of Facebook?
I'll tell you what, with the average person in social media is a big time suck. How many hours a day people will get stuck on the Facebook, or they are always checking that, or their Instagram, or Snapchat, or whatever social media you have. I saw it A, as a time sink, and B, I got sick of seeing every little thing everybody I know ever did on Facebook. When you get your feed, you start see what everybody's doing, and they like to post, hey, look what I had for breakfast this morning, for example. Like, I don't care, I don't need to know every minute detail of your life. And also, again, with the social media, you're looking for a job, employers check that kind of stuff. You don't want to have certain things if they're controversial or or let's say unprofessional. You don't want that kind of business being out there for the world to see. Henceforth, any employer, since they are now doing their due diligence and seeing what you do online. I think a lower profile you have, the better. Unless you have someone in the public like you or your Clary, for example. If you want to be public facing, yes, you're going to have those outlets. But if you're the average person, just I'm never on Twitter. Maybe I post every week, I guess. And I also have LinkedIn. That's my social media platform. But again, LinkedIn is more for the professional side. You want to link with people that way. But again, you keep it low profile, on your social media if you're just the average person. You don't want certain things getting out there, and you're just mitigating that risk, I think.
So, anytime at work, did this ever come up from superiors, or anytime they approached you, being in IT and saying, hey, like, we want you to talk to others about, first of all, social media representing, themselves while on company time and not on company time, and some of these things. Did that ever come up?
Usually in the corporate communications, everybody has a social media use policy nowadays. Don't trash a company, for example. But they don't really dive into the personal aspect of how you live your life. If you put everything out there, it's out there for people to search. And again, companies could look at negative things and say, hey, look, Joe in accounting is, doing all this wild stuff and he's posting on Facebook. How does that reflect on us as a company? Right. So you have to be aware of that also. It's not just you and your personal reputation. When you work for somewhere, I know it's cliche, but you represent that place you work. So, try to minimize that crossover between your personal and professional life.
I had some banking I was going to do about 6 months ago. And I called the bank, and the banker I was the quote unquote banker I was talking with, she didn't seem to have all of the answers I needed, which seemed pretty basic for what a banker should know. I've worked. That's one thing too, is, I've always spent since little on, maybe 2-3 weeks, always like working to know more about my finances and, the various interest rates and bond rates and bond trends and stuff, just to educate that, because, finance is such a big part of a person's life. I mean, but so this person, was just throwing up some red flags, like they didn't quite have it all down. And I was double checking some things that they were telling me. And I was like, oh, I don't know if this is totally right. And it was going to be, a pretty sizable investment. I mean, not like anything that would, make them be like, oh my goodness. But so I went and I typed this person's name in, plus the name of the bank, because I couldn't find like a email address on the bank website for this person. So I just typed the name in the bank, and I was trying to just learn a little more, like what's their history, like where they go to college or what have they done. And it comes up with their Facebook page, and it lists that they work at this bank. So I'm like, this is the right person. And this employee is holding a beer in the picture, like at some party, and totally this inappropriate pose, and then has all of these like sites that are liked that, are all, if the company knew it, I mean, they would flip out. And a substantial, huge company. And I could also see that this person had switched. This was like the third job in 3 years. So right then I was like, boom, you're done. Like I need someone who is vested in what they're doing and serious and has done this as a profession. And then also someone that obviously has the sense to know that you can't post this and represent yourself and put right underneath who you're employed by as this company. Right. So that just floored me. I've also, So I experienced kind of the same thing on Facebook. I got tired of the time that it was taking, and then it was, yeah. So let me see. It was the time, and then I really felt I was giving out too much information, and then I didn't care to know, I guess, like you, what someone was eating for lunch. And it's ironic you say that, because when we were on vacation, my wife pointed out somebody taking a picture of like a plate of food that they had been served at a nicer restaurant we were at, and she's like, look what they're doing. And I'm like, yeah, that'll be on social media like in 10 seconds. And I'm like, this is just crazy. But yeah, I obviously I think it's healthier to not have that external validation happening. I was listening to a podcast a while ago, and it was with someone who was an engineer in the social media field.
Right.
And he said that the change was more and more push notifications, like, hey, this is happening. Your friend just posted, or you haven't been on like in, 12 hours or something, and you need to check what's happening. But this was all done with also a group of like psychologists and psychiatrists to figure out how to basically addict people. So it went from this platform of I guess, trying to connect people, although I don't know if that was ever the purpose. It was really probably just harvesting data. But
probably
to really purposely addicting people and addicting kids into this in their various formats. So I'm with you there, and I'm going to also talk about. I was at Green Bay Packer training camp on Monday.
Yep, it's that time of the year.
So it is that time of the year, and I had a couple friends who played in the NFL, and actually one I was going to have on the show, but he just had their fifth child. And he had retired from the team, and he's left the team to take on another job. So it's actually not a good time to bring him into the show right now. But one of the things we talked about, for example, social media and all of that was, I asked him, I said, and I asked another friend of mine who also made the leap into the NFL, was there any type of induction process? Did they tell you, like, don't post on social media, like where you're going, where you're at, and do they tell you about the risk to your family and all of these things, and people trying to obviously, claim things, hey, I slipped on your sidewalk at Halloween or something like that, and they said no, that didn't happen at all. Like, they came in, and unless it was their agent telling them, mostly the agent would say, listen, you're a target now. And mostly too, like, your family, your parents are a target. Like, anyone could just, file a lawsuit against them, because they're going to think if it's $5,000-$10,000, they'll just settle it they have the money through you. So in these cases, they were told to get, umbrella policies, liability policies for this whole thing of, being hurt on your property, or if you are in an accident or something and they find out that your son is in the NFL. So he was talking about that, but it surprised one of my friends, but all of them were kind of saying, no, like, no one ever went through that with us. So these guys have been out of the league for maybe like 5 to 8 years. And, but one of them said that the new players coming in, that definitely is like, they sit them down and they say, don't put your tracker on social media, the GPS, so people know where you're at, know where you're at, whatever you're posting, represents the organization, and try not to get into these, Twitter wars or things in the moment that you're posting. Also, there was a way too that if they were in pictures, someone comes up to them, especially if you're in the NCAA, like a Division I, someone comes up to you and takes your picture. One of my friends who played at Wisconsin, football at Wisconsin, said that they were instructed there was a specific way they needed to pose in public if it was for a picture. And that was a way to identify that it was that someone had come up to them and said, can I get my picture with you? Because what had happened somewhere is there were some pictures taken, and then they took them and put them into a calendar and sold this calendar for money. And it became this whole thing of like the player didn't know these pictures were being used for this calendar, and the NCAA got involved and stuff. So, and also like a really strict dress code too. Like he was saying, yeah, we didn't wear anything that was Badger related, like outside of going to class. Classes, it was jeans and a button down shirt and no logo stuff. I mean, you really want it to blend in. So. Yeah, and you've probably seen this too, but like we had relatives a year or two ago who left for social media, or who left on a trip and posted like, we're leaving on this date. They posted photos from the trip and all of that.
That'll get you robbed real quick.
And I was thinking, wow, this is insane. That you're.
I know exactly where you're going to be, and I know you're not going to be home. And I'm someone on Facebook seeing this. And I know someone who, breaks into places. Yeah, you're running that risk. You're blasting to the entire world. Hey, I'm not going to be home. Not a happening. I'll let you know when I get back where I was, but yeah. I'm not going to put it out there saying, hey, look, I'm going to be way far away from my home and there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah,
it is so crazy that people do that. So, yeah, as you. I'm recommending to people, to watch their social media profile. And then also, we've just seen this more too, where corporations will pull that and look and say, you posted this, or you were even at like whatever type of rally and things like that. And I mean, I guess obviously people do have free speech and the ability to do things. But I mean, if you're wearing a shirt that has the company logo on it, and you're holding up some sign that's borderline, obviously that's not going to fly. So I think that's something that people, I don't know if people are wising up to it or not, because I guess I haven't been on Facebook that much, but I do have acquaintances that, very much are putting all these pictures out, and also putting pictures out of family members and stuff like that. And it's like, the things that might fit well in a context right now maybe don't fit well 5 years from now when the context has changed. But then someone will pull back this picture and say, you posted this, or you posted whatever. And we see that like all the time with, with people, even one or two tweets that they might have put out there. And of course you have to own up to it.
Like the guy from the Brewers.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, of posts that he had made when he was in high school, and which really isn't, what was 8 or 10 years, earlier. But of course, yeah, needing to own up to that. And I actually, know someone in law enforcement that with some social media post, like 10 years ago had come forward, and that person then was separated from their employment by the city because of these, questionable posts. And it was just one of those things where it's like, whoa. So yeah, to really weigh that out. And, I never post anything too that has a picture of my kids on it. That never goes out. So let's, so I'm gonna shift a little more into my Lambeau Field account. So yeah,
there we go.
Lambeau Field. And by the way, Charles, when I was young and went to Lambeau Field, I mean, it was nothing like it was today. So it's a $1 billion plus stadium in this 37 acres of development around it, and just really nice. But back then, I mean, it was
back when James Lofton and those guys were playing. Yep.
And they didn't even have a Jumbotron, so when the first Jumbotron came in, and it was so grainy, and it was like a used one from, wherever, it's probably the size of a garage door, a single garage door, when, today a Jumbotron is, 4K resolution and, 180 feet long by 40 feet high or something. But I remember how excited we were. My brother and I were going to these games and being like, oh my God, it was like, 3 colors that they would kind of mix together, almost this monochrome type thing. And so state of the art. But back then we would go to training camp and it was pretty accessible. I mean, you could go there as the players would walk across the street, you could walk with them. There really wasn't much for security. And I went to, so when we were at training camp this past week, a couple of weird things happened. One is I pulled into one of the main parking lots by Lambeau Field. And it was kind of weird because, training camp had just started. It was like 1:00. And this big parking lot only had like 3 other cars in it. So I'm thinking it's really bizarre. Like this whole thing should be, packed. But there were, they were taking down not stadiums, but like concert, like overhead platforms and stuff like that. So they must have had like concerts there the night before in the parking lot. So all of that was being like disassembled and stuff. So we pulled in and parked, and I was thinking from the safety perspective, I'm thinking this is weird, but maybe they just opened this lot up. So we go over and we're watching the players practice and things like that, which is pretty cool. And then when practice is done, the players walk back, and some of them get on bikes, like, little dirt bikes and things like that, and they'll ride them back to the stadium that a kid has their bike. And it was also autograph day. So like, a lot of people are getting their autographs, player autographs. And I had a Green Bay Packer polo shirt on, like a nice polo and like tan shorts. So I kind of like and a visor. I kind of look the role of like someone who might be working at some capacity with the team. and
it's like a trainer or something.
Yeah, whatever. Someone who came down, from the stadium and was so. And of course, no one is going to probably think twice because I'm there with my wife and my daughters, and they both have on, like Packer shirts or something. And as the players start to walk back to the stadium, it narrows down where there's railed off areas on both sides, and it's maybe about 8 feet wide, and the players and a couple of these kids, the kids that they select out will go up, and then people are on the outside of this more or less fenced in area, though it's not like a chain link fence. It's just, but anyway, we kind of got hustled into the main fray of everything because the players kind of swarmed around us, and we're just walking normally like down the street. So they're on the left and right of us, and we kind of got funneled right into this main path that leads up into the stadium and the locker room. And I'm realizing, like, I'm looking left and right. I'm like, ooh, like we shouldn't be here. So not that this was bad, and we weren't like seeking autographs. I didn't have my camera out. So I think we just look the part of like, well, yeah, they must be related somehow to whatever, or maybe this is someone that works up with, and they brought their kids in this day, and they just want to have this experience. So, but about 100 feet into this, and literally, like next to us is Clay Matthews, walking next to us, and it was just so funny because I knew we shouldn't be there. People are taking pictures of the players, and we're like walking with them at a kind of faster pace. And someone from the Packers organization stops us and says, you're not supposed to be in this. And I'm like, I totally get it. Like, I understand. And we know we got pushed into this. I'm like, I'm just trying to get the first exit out, the first break in the fence. Like, we're out of here because I need to get back to the car. So they're like, yeah, no problem. So like 25 feet up ahead, there was a break where one of their other employees was waiting there, and then we smoothly just walked out. No big thing. So I got back to the car and ready to leave, and the entrance we came in is locked. Like, they closed the gate and it's completely locked. And so I'm driving around, and I'm going to drive around these, like, where the concert was. They're taking down these platforms and stuff. And I'm like totally realizing there's no way out of this because they have the bollards that are the big concrete bollards around the stadium, so you can't like get anywhere close to the stadium. And there's basically the only way out was the way in. And finally, like, and we're dodging machinery and stuff like that. And finally, like, I find someone in security and kind of they come up to me in their golf cart, and I roll down the window, and the guy's just perplexed. He's like, kind of, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I said, listen, like, we parked over here. The gate was open and I can't get out of here. And he goes, oh yeah, like the gate was open just a little bit. We had a couple semis come in to load up some stuff. And he said, follow me. So like I'm following him, and we get to this other part, and he gets us out. But it was the strangest thing, because also from a safety perspective, and not to knock on the Packers, because of, you know, again, there are the bollards around the stadium, and you know, there's working. One of the things I know with some of the inside stuff I've been able to do with professional sports is there's so much surveillance and so much monitoring that goes on that the public isn't even aware of. So, you know, I knew obviously that we were being watched and all of those things. And if we would have just kept going around the parking lot, they would have eventually, you know, intervened with us. But it was just weird, because from a safety perspective, it's one of those things where if you have to have a very high situational awareness, but also if you portray like you should be somewhere, like you can. That's for example with a school. Like, people will say like, the school has a buzzer system and they won't let anybody in and all of that. And I always say, well, I could probably get myself into any school anywhere. All I'd have to do is research like who was the principal, superintendent, or some names and maintenance and stuff, you know, because they always list their staff directory, put on a uniform, and you know, and just come in and say like, I'm over here to look at like HVAC or something like that, or I need to bring this whatever for Janice, you know, like, you know, into the building or something like that, and drop this off. And people will always be like, boom, yeah, you're fine, you're legit, like, you're in. So it was weird, because like I totally knew like we were breaching a lot of security areas, like inadvertently, and probably because of the fact that we were just so innocuous as this family. But I don't know if you've ever experienced like Pittsburgh training camp, anything like that.
Oh, nothing to my knowledge like that. That is at least you have a story to tell the kids, or something the kids will remember when they get older. Yeah, nothing like that. Situational awareness in high school. I had to walk through metal detectors. Speaking of situational awareness, wow. There was a when I was in 8th grade, there was a shooting at the high school. So they're like, all right, high school, junior high, metal detectors, and bam. Mind you, this was, you know, it was just one of those reactionary things to hear school shootings that, you know.
Right.
Again, in that context, you could say, hey, I'm doing afternoon sports. I can still sneak a burner into my locker. So, you know, even though we had every single day, someone, you know, we're going through metal detection and all that. Mind you, this is back in high school. Someone could have snuck something in anyway. Would say I had detention after school, or someone's going to pick me up, or I got to run to my locker real quick, and then they hand someone something and they stuck it in there. Again, it would have been like an off hours type of thing where everything is lax. It's not during the school day or just before or just prior. So, you know, that's probably the closest experience I would have in terms of that kind of security setting, and how easily you can get around it, you know, inadvertently or, you know, purposefully.
So tell me, I mean, just from your life, something that, you know, you were either proximal to that was, you know, like a safety crisis, or else, you know, some situation, again, you know, kind of like what you were talking to, maybe like you inadvertently got access to something that you shouldn't have gotten access to, or even in the IT world, maybe like, you know, you're working on something and you're like, oh my goodness, like all these files are on this drive and they shouldn't be here at all because like everybody has access to this, and these are like HR things, and like who in the world would have put these here? I mean, tell me about maybe like a couple aha moments like you've had like that and how you've reacted and in those.
Aha moments. Well, in IT, we would get just random questions of, I used to be able to access this, and you go look up their account, and you're like, wait a minute, when did you get access to this? Right. Oh, shoot. Oh, this is why I was in X department. I'm a Y department. I was like, listen, you know how they are about this. I'm surprised they haven't got caught yet. So go ahead and I'll remove your access before anything happens because even though you were in this department, we'll say you moved from accounting to somewhere. You moved on up. You shouldn't have invoices, accounts payable items, receivable items. No, you don't see that anymore. Why do you even have access to this? And you're complaining that something's going wrong when you try to access it. There's your problem. You shouldn't even have access to it in the first place. Just as a work-related example. Again, you have a lot of turnover in companies that people move on into different departments. So when their roles change, access has changed. And if you had access to compromising, I guess, information, once you leave that department, you can't get it. So again, that's been a general rule in my professional career. No matter what company you are, you're going to have those kind of situations. So that's the closest thing I can say. Hey, look, business security risk because you shouldn't even see these.
Yeah, and if someone ever come to you and say like, "Hey, I have access to things like I'm not sure I should have access to," like never.
Never. Okay. No, you end up finding out. Really, it's so rare that people come because they still have this access. They're gonna be like, "Hey, look,
right.
I'm not gonna tell anybody. I can still do X, Y, and Z." So we usually root them out instead of them coming to us.
Okay. Because I knew somebody it was in a school setting, and they had access to actually everybody. There was some mistake, but everybody had access to a drive with personal information shared on it for all employees. And it was one person who, brought it up to IT and said, "Listen, this is here now, and it's been here for a while, and I can go in and I can see everybody's like birth date and address and stuff like that." And they're like, "What?" And then somehow. But it was one of those things too, where it had been there for quite a while. So it was a question of, who had this information, and ideally like no one would have done anything with it, but you never know, or someone would have just copied it, or just something crazy like, "Oh, this is great because now we know when everybody's birthday is, so we can send out an email," or just whatever. So Charles, as we kind of get into wrap up mode, let's talk about transitioning from one job to another. Tell me how that worked for you, and specifically also a non-disclosure agreement, what that is, because I'm not sure everybody who's listening to this is going to understand what a NDA is. And if when you do bring it up, they might think, "Ooh, like when I was hired 10 years ago, I'm not sure if I signed an NDA. I'm not sure if it's in the staff handbook." And I'll preface this a little bit in saying, sometimes when people leave one job to go to another, they'll take some information with them, maybe some projects that they've worked on. They'll download it on, the thumb drive and whatever, not necessarily in a malicious way, but just because like I worked on this project and this PowerPoint and these things, and I'm moving into a field where I'm going to be able to use some of these types of things to help me in that, which of course you're going to tell me why you shouldn't do that. But I think that happens quite a bit where people try to harvest things that they feel that they've worked on and they don't realize, well, it's proprietary. You worked on that as an employee. You just can't walk out the door with it. And then also what that might mean for ramifications if all of a sudden, some of that showing up or some client information that you're taking with you somewhere else. So how did that work for you, with transitioning from one employer to another?
I'll tell you what, this is a situation to me. I've never been in a position where I've had something and something else came up. I was always, out of work looking for a job. But to preface that, you brought up the NDA, the good old non-disclosure agreement. They're pretty much standard fare, especially in IT anymore. No matter what company you go to, you say, hey, whatever you worked on stays here and does not leave. It's almost like if you're working for a corporation and you research something for a patent on the corporation's time. That doesn't belong to you. Your name's on it, but it's not your patent. It's the corporation's patent. And you sign those agreements just to it's the corporation say, hey, I don't want this guy taking this stuff and going to another competitor, and there's legal ramifications surrounding that. The same in IT and any non-disclosure agreement. You occasionally, if you stay in one sector and non-compete clauses and all this stuff, don't work for competitors or whatever. In my case, it's different because I'm bouncing from one industry to a completely different industry. Therefore, the NDAs really wouldn't apply to my personal situation, but you still sign them anyway. Just be aware of what you do on the job and what you can and cannot take. You can take your skills with you, but you can't take projects with you, for example. Let's say you're a developer. You're not bringing one code from one company to another, but you can bring your skills in the coding for that company over. Again, it's just a thing of common sense. Just know what you can bring. Know what you can divulge outside of the organization. Again, it's a judgment call. Just use your best judgment, and again, use common sense in that area. This whole moving jobs thing is new to me. I was actually approached by the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center for a position. I worked for them under the contract prior to U.S. Steel, and they came at me and said, "Hey, we got this position. You want to talk about it?" There was no interview, no nothing. It was going from it was they were familiar with me already, so it wasn't like I was applying blind. They came at me and said, "Hey, we have this spot open for you. Do you want it?" And it happened quickly. I had to make a decision: do I want to stay or go?
Hey, let me throw this by. Did HR ever come to you at your time at U.S. Steel and say, or let me put it this way: an employee is leaving, and they say, did they ever come to you and say, we want to shut down their email at 5:00 today, or their access to any external access, or we also want to know if what they've been accessing the last week or two? Has that ever happened? Or like anyone that has that ever in the field has told you about that, of HR's approached them and how they've kind of just exited people out? Or how do you think even that's happening for you? Because I'm sure you can log into all your stuff remotely to a point, and then how do they end that?
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
Oh, in terms of I'm done. I have no equipment. I'm sure my accounts are active, but you leave a place, you surrender any equipment, whether laptops, tablets, phones. I'm sure my account is active at least until about probably 8:30 tomorrow morning when the IT teams get their email, say, hey, these people would left the company, disable their stuff.
Okay, so that's how that works. Okay.
Yeah, it's common policy at the majority of the companies. If someone leaves, their access is they don't get it. It would be a miracle if they still had access after leaving the company in any capacity whatsoever.
I remember one university I had taught for a couple of years, and then once I left, and that was adjunct. I mean, but once I had left, they never deactivated my account, so I was able to go into the university library, which was great because I could pull off research papers, and I mean it was for more personal interest. I wasn't turning any of that into profit or doing research for anybody, but. But it was one of these weird things where it was, and then finally, like one day, a year and a half later, my login didn't work. But yeah, they had kept me in the system, and I was pretty surprised by that because I thought they would have some way to expunge my stuff or immediately disable it. But I mean, there wasn't anything I could access that could bring any harm or any data or things like that. But I had access to the library, which was phenomenal because usually. The university libraries, I mean, I'm sure what you'll have access to through working with a university affiliated hospital is just going to be phenomenal. So let me throw this past you kind of in closing. Something that I've seen as a trend in expert witness request, and this is something I brought to the awareness of people who work or have worked in the FBI, personal security lawyers all across the country. I've kind of worked through my network on this, and everyone is like, "Ooh, I don't have a good answer for that." So here's a scenario that seems to be playing out more and more in corporate America. So somebody is let go. So they're, they notify someone, and here's the deal though. They let somebody go because they say, you're under investigation for contributing to a hostile work environment. Something like that. It's something, it's not, you've embezzled or something, or we're calling the police, but it's something which is very subjective. Where, they'll say, yeah, whatever, a hostile work environment. And you'll be like, well, what? And it could be that they don't exactly tell you either. So that's the thing that people are trying to figure out. Well, what is it? What did I do or what didn't I do? Did I say something at a meeting? Did I not respond in a way that people would have felt, was there something going on globally at work that I didn't participate in, or what am I, what's going on here? So what's happening is people are being told that, okay, you are on leave and all of your email files, everything are like frozen. You have access to nothing during the investigation. And then typically they're offered to resign, or they're offered to have a due process through the company type of hearing of like how they've contributed to a hostile work environment and things like that. And most people will never want to do that because those things then stick with you. I mean, that follows you versus just resigning from the company. So I see this more on this, obviously I work on the education side with this, but happening in the school setting where, again, let's say it's some principals or something like that. And they are told, you're on leave, you can't access anything. And the problem comes up then, so they reach out to an attorney and they say, listen, this has just happened to me. And, I don't want to leave my job, but what do I do in this case? And the attorneys then ask, well, they try to figure out what the claim is against them. And then the person who's put on leave, let's say, again, say it's the school administrator, principal, they don't have any records. They can't say like, well, here's an email that I sent out to staffs indicating, that I think might have caused this, or here's like, I brought this up to the superintendent, making them aware of some issues that were going on or whatever. So they have like nothing in their defense. They have nothing to defend themselves with because all of their documents are froze. So it becomes, it's a scary tactic. And it's one of these things where I've been asked a few times, like, how to help people through this, and I can't offer any advice. And again, I brought it through my circles, and I'm thinking, someone's going to know how to respond to this. And they'll say, well, like the people who are, one of my friends in the FBI said, well, you could run like a Taurus browser, and you could like back up things and have it available to you. But of course, you're breaching the NDA and some of these things. So you're to lose no matter what. So that's something too that I'm kind of freaked out about right now. And I don't know from an IT perspective if you have seen this or you have any recommendations. So, again, it
seems to be an extreme situation, by the way, although I'm sure it happens. With IT access, we take it away. Good luck. We take your access away. That's it. We control that. So, and again, with the whole NDA thing, there really isn't a good way out of that particular situation. The first thing you said, lawyer up, go see a lawyer. That's the best I can do for you. And you probably have to go through some legal processes to, probably get subpoenaed, try to get that information subpoenaed by a judge and whatever have you. Again, there's no good way out of it. You're going to have to let, the legal system do its thing. And again, I'm at a loss. But again, you get that, we take away that information as IT. You're not getting that access, and we're not going to give it to you unless we're being forced to. So, again, that's not a good situation to be in the first place. Again, I don't have an answer except lawyer up and hope for the best.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I've been at with now. I mean, we're in summer, so we've had a little bit of a hiatus on this, but it was really pretty prevalent in spring. Like there were. And again, I'm contacted from across the country, so I guess, relatively speaking, in any one area, this probably isn't happening much. But on a whole, it was something I hadn't seen at all. And there was some reason, there was something that was also shared with HR was giving more ability to freeze records during an investigation. I think just within the last year is some extension of like the Patriot Act or something. I don't know. I have to go back to my notes on that, but it was something kind of like that you've just confirmed. And the hard part on that is if you're an employee and it's something where you feel it's totally blindsides you, you haven't, done anything in the wrong, or at least if you want to, point out things that you've done, emails, presentations, they could say like you haven't properly given professional development to whatever. And you could say, well, yeah, I document it 3 times. I tried to contact them to provide this training and, but then here they didn't participate. They didn't set up a time with me. And all of a sudden, they let somebody into the building that shouldn't have been in the building because they didn't participate in the safe perimeters training. And now that's on me, but like I did my due diligence here and was trying to do it. But yet like they can't prove that because they don't have the dates. And so it's really, it's a scary thing. But I think what you've done is you've just reinforced kind of, what I'm seeing in that. And then also the point of, don't try to work your way around this by like making copies of everything you do at work and putting them on thumb drives or sending them off to your home, email account and all of these things because you're violating an NDA and that'll get tracked down and all of these things. And somehow this will get resolved. I don't know what is exactly going. I think a lot of it is frankly, politically motivated in some cases. which just seems to be a trend that's happening nationwide right now. But kind of some scary stuff. The guy Scott Adams, who produces the Dilbert comic strip.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I listened to Scott's podcast, and he said, in the last couple of years, he's really had to be careful of what he's put out in social media, because of also the perception of people and how that's impacted his ability to stay marketable, not only like of newspapers having his comic strip, but also his, he would do corporate presentations and all of that. And as soon as people think you're starting to take some positionality on something, they kind of shut that down. And he was saying specifically that he was talking about how different people in leadership positions use persuasion. So he was defining persuasion, and he was defining it specifically with President Trump and persuasive techniques that the president was using, specific ones that he was identifying. And then he was doing others too, but he was saying, people were taking that as you're taking a political agenda. And then he says, no, I'm talking about persuasion and how persuasion works in the media. And this was one example and whatever, but I don't know exactly where I was going, but I think it's one of those things too, where we've talked about the low profile and we've talked about, separating work out from non-work environments. And, but yeah, one of the things I just wrote in my notes, and I'm teaching again this law class for school superintendents, is that I am going to get into that non-disclosure agreement and make sure that they're very apprised of that. And then, of course, a lot of these people are working at home, as well as working at work, in the work setting, or they're telecommuting or things like that. So it gets pretty easy to commingle files, and stuff like that. So I guess as we close, Charles, tell me about like people working at home. Were they issued laptops, or did they have like some different, I mean, it's one thing if you're at the physical site, but if you're working off-site, how does that work for security, like for IT security?
I just want to say, first of all, that I'm glad I don't have to deal with that stuff anymore.
Yay!
It is an inordinate pain to have to deal with remote users. Primarily from our standpoint as support, we're not right there to help you. Yes, by and large, everywhere that I've been that people work remote, they've been issued corporate laptops, and they would have VPN access to the company's network, which is if you're using the way everything's structured is only the corporate laptop can see the corporate network when you're on VPN. Okay. So there's no mix and match of personal versus I'm not using my laptop to VPN into the company to do work. No, I'm on a company issued laptop. Again, remote work, it is very difficult. I give help desk people credit for having to deal with that. They're on the front lines of people calling in, even within a company. They're calling in. The help desk guys aren't running to your desk to help you. They're trying to help you remotely over the phone. I do not envy that position. Me personally, I'd rather be there.
Right.
Again, yeah, I'm glad I'm leaving that part of the part of my profession. Being as when you're in a clinical and a hospital environment, you're there. There's no remote travel. You're in a hospital. Everything is self-contained, which is great for me. I'll take that any day. Not to disparage remote working from home. I envy those who have the ability to do that. I just don't. So again, it's a tougher animal supporting remote users, especially if you can't connect to their own system. Say they can't even get in. Trying to talk your way through some sort of process to troubleshoot is, it's an experience unto itself, and you better hope it works. Else they're gonna have to come in, and we'll have to look at it that way. Again, it's the industry within healthcare. I don't have to worry about that, but it should be more prevalent, even though I've heard stories of companies kind of reining that in for whatever reason. But I think that's going to be the trend going forward. So, again, good luck to those who do remote support. I do not envy you at all.
Yeah, no, I can just imagine the challenges inherent to that. So, just to wrap up what we've talked about today, and this has been an incredible discussion, and I've been waiting to have Charles on the show for a long time, and it's been scheduling, and we've had some vacations, and the system went down, and my studio here, and had to do some things. So very glad that it worked out, and this has been a terrific discussion. So just topping off the points that we went over. So we talked about the safety culture at U.S. Steel, specific in the research center, but also the entire department getting together monthly to have a debriefing out on safety. What's been happening from the statistics side of things. Was there any significant event? If so, what happened? What was the investigation of it? And then what changed? Very important. And I think anybody working out there in any industry that has a role in management, take this to heart. Especially, I talk to schools a lot. Schools don't do this. They really need to do this. Another part we got into was economic safety from a personal perspective, meaning pursuing certifications. If your company pays for that, puts that opportunity out there for you, go for it. And then also, side hustles. Always have money coming in, doing different things, because if you can get to the point where you can pay off a mortgage earlier, that's more money for you to apply toward retirement, and just remove yourself from the corporate world, or being totally at the whim of somebody else, as far as employment. And then, we talked about social media and keeping a low profile. Both Charles and I aren't Facebook users, have not been for a number of years, but there are so many people who are really addicted to social media. And they've come out with the World Health Organization in the last year identified video game addiction as a formal medical diagnosis, and actually that's showing up in schools this fall also. So you'll have some students who will be diagnosed as addicted to video games, and I'm not sure what that looks like as far as treating that, but whatever you post online is going to follow you. And not only that, in real time, employers are getting much more savvy at going through and checking, what are employees posting, especially employees who are interacting with the public. I gave my example of working with the banker who I just tried to bring up some basic credentials on this person. And I typed in that person plus the bank. I mean, it wasn't anything where I was going into the dark web or anything like that. And immediately this Facebook page pops up that has, this person holding a beer, and yes, they work at this bank, and some other stuff that was pretty unflattering to that person, and also professionally. I'm sure that their employment would have either been terminated or they would have been told immediately to change that. And just like, how much do you want people to know about you? That's the other thing. I mean, you put this stuff out there and people start to triangulate, well, you tend to go these places at this time, and, you put out that you're on vacation and stuff like that. And we had a great discussion in wrapping up about this transitioning between employers. And, that happens a lot now. It's very frequent for people to almost, be in this free agency of employment. And we're in a very employment-friendly situation right now, where if you have skill sets, like you have, Charles, people are going to come after you, especially if you've worked for them and they know the work that you've done, and make you an offer. So we talked about how you transition from one employer to another, but then also this whole thing of the NDA, or the non-disclosure agreement. And I know it's very big in your world, but I'll tell you, when we talked about it today, that was the first time I've heard about that in an education context, like I haven't heard about that at all. Like no one ever talks about that. And the other part is this whole thing of the days of working on some things on your home computer or saving things to a thumb drive and taking them home and whatever, or if you leave the company that, well, I worked on some of these projects, so I'm going to take these with me because I might do something similar, and here's my template already I can harvest from. Like, absolutely not. And, the ramifications that you can have from doing something like that, which I think maybe 5 or 10 years ago was probably almost even encouraged by some companies. I remember one of the places I worked at about 10 years ago, maybe 12, they installed on my work computer a program, I think it was called like Team Viewer or something like that. And basically I could log in from home on my home computer and access all of my work files. So I could, because honestly, the job included a lot of stuff. It was salaried, so you're working a lot of stuff at home too. And that type of stuff today I don't think would fly nearly to the level it did back then. It was just an expectation. But at the same time, I could have easily harvested, or what if I have a virus, or what if my system gets corrupted now that information gets harvested right off of, this entire organization I'm working for. It's like, who downloaded the thing that said, don't open? That who double clicked on that and opened that file and infected the entire system. But so yeah, these are all really salient points, and I want to come back. I mean, just the one that hits me. I mean, all these are big, but the one that really hits too is this this personal economic safety. You've done an excellent job of it, and of diversifying yourself through credentials, which can never be taken away from you, and honing your IT into also the marketing side and understanding your reputation in that. Like, for example, like eBay, like if someone sees that you are a seller and you have 100%, and the comments that people put, like fast shipping, item was as described. I mean, this is all reputation building, and using professional networks like LinkedIn and things like that. So you've really done a good job with that. And this is something where I think people can either just get stagnant, they're comfortable in their position, or they have things offered to them, like the company is willing to do things, and they're like, no, I'm going to pass on that. And they are really leaving a lot of great opportunities kind of on the side of the road. They're not taking advantage of it. And these things of diversifying and these side hustles and things like that just make you so much more economically resilient in a safety situation of a recession. Something, significant happens in the world. I mean, earthquake in California, major earthquake, and we have a devastation, and an economic downturn for, a number of years. Also the fact of, changing, that you have jobs open up and you can look and say, I've honed my skill set, so I'm a candidate for this other job also, being able to take your skills. So those are great things. We've listened to Aaron Clarey. I know Aaron will talk about, people going into the military, and if you're in the military, taking advantage of, the different certifications that are presented, because they're usually pretty plentiful. I had a friend who was in the Navy, and he took anything that they threw by him. Like, they're like, do you want to be certified in whatever? And he's like, yes, I'll take it. And whatever. And then he also had his GI Bill. And he got training in IT and has worked for 2 companies since he's been out, but he's been out 20 years, and just always talks about anytime any opportunity was put before him, he never said no. He always took advantage of the training or the opportunity, those things, because he knew somewhere down the line that would benefit him, versus the easy way out of saying, no, I'm not going to do it. So, anything you want to share with us before we wrap up today?
Oh man, I think we covered quite a lot. I don't think I have anything left in the tank, and orientation day tomorrow at the new job, so
okay.
We got that going on. like I said, I'm glad to have been on with you and just to discuss all these seemingly unrelated topics, but in a way they're all interrelated in terms of both work and life. So it was good to discuss a broad spectrum of topics like that.
I feel the same way. And also your background in IT is something that hasn't presented itself on my podcast. So your perspective on this changes my perspective on the topics that we talked about. So thank you so much again. Charles Mack, our guest today on the Safety Doc podcast. And Charles, go Steelers, right?
Yeah, it's about that time. No, baseball season. The Buccos are actually making moves. So the Pirates are doing their thing to be relevant. So my eyes are on them right now.
All right. I'm still holding out for the Brewers, the best record in the National League, but not in first place, still trailing the Cubs. But I will take it because I remember the 82 World Series when I was a kid and how exciting that was. So, my goodness, I want that again sometime, one more time. So
at least you didn't have 20 straight losing seasons.
No. And sometimes I have to learn my Harry Carey, like Ryan Dempster did a great Harry Carey. I always love that. Will Ferrell used to do that Harry Carey on Saturday Night Live too. But all right. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show and wishing you the very best in your new position.
All right. Thank you very much.
This has been the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio show host, and leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Remember to check back each week for the latest, best, and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. You can find Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.